I can't delete any of these conversations because they feel so good. So here we are, Thursdays, 11 a.m., QT conversations. We are being very, very honest and human here today because November is exhausting and I am knackered. I've got building works happening here. I've got children at home who shouldn't be at home. I'm a very, very well-behaved dog. And I fell over and hurt my foot yesterday. And Dee fell over and hurt her hands. And so we are human beings. Yes, we are. And that's just fine. That is how we show up as professionals. I've been talking with Odette a lot about what it means to be safe, skilled, and supported, and how powerful that is as a concept. And this is all of those things in this room. There's safety for asking questions and sharing thoughts, and being vulnerable. There's skill in terms of the thinking that we push forward together. And there's the supportiveness that happens in the room and outside the room, because the people here help each other every single day. And sometimes some of our members say to me, it's a lifeline. I don't actually engage that much, but just seeing the pings, seeing the conversation, knowing it's there makes me feel less lonely. So for all of those reasons, what we're doing here is pretty floomin' awesome. And today the conversation is, well, you know that my book, which is to my left hand, to my right hand and behind me, Love Tutoring, Be the Tutor Your Student Needs, which is highly practical, engaging, beautifully laid out, and a fantastic read that made Georgina cry recently. It won't make you all cry, just Georgina. She's a sap. But what I can tell you is that
now I need to know what it was that made
it was like on page 2 or something. It was right. It was, but you can you post that Instagram in the WhatsApp group for us, because it was so yum. She did this whole thing where she videoed herself reading the book and then did a voiceover. It was like thoroughly David Attenborough. It's like David Attenborough for readers. Can you imagine if David Attenborough came to my house and he's like, and Julia's sitting on the sofa and she's turning the pages like that. Anyway, that's what it was, but it was very good. And she cries. Okay, so hello, you. Your hair looks awesome today.
Thank you.
Okay, so you are here just in time to hear the preamble, and we're going to share this article together. So Crown House, my publishers, said you can write articles for different magazines. I'm like, yeah, let's do that. But each magazine that they agreed an article for had a different thing that they were looking for me to discuss. So it's actually been a really interesting opportunity to take the thinking much, much further than the book went. So this article that I'm going to share with you today that was just published, I found it on my Google Alerts. I've got Google Alerts for my name, and it came up with something that was genuinely me. No, I know I'm a nerd, but it worked. Today it worked. So I'm going to read this article with you, and we're going to discuss some of the ideas in it. I think you're going to find that it's really very fresh and informative. No pressure, Julia. So I'm going to share screen as well. And I did give you guys the link. Share. And it is free to sign up to this website, so it's not that there's a paywall. Okay, so the publication is Head Teacher Update. And they asked me to talk about how schools can work better with tutors. Hands up if you want to know more about that, right? Hands up if you think you have some answers to that question. Interesting. Okay, so let's see. Teacher-tutor partnerships, a decentralized approach to school-based tutoring. According to a recent study, more than half primary school teachers surveyed said that tutoring had a positive impact on pupils. Whether you managed to make use of the National Tutoring Programme funding or not, it is significant that at its time of need, the government turned to tutoring. That's because tutoring done well works better than most other interventions. Welcome, Claire. We're doing story time. According to the Education Endowment Foundation's Teaching and Learning Toolkit, effective one-to-one tuition can accelerate a pupil's progress by providing up to 5 months' worth of additional learning across a year. Small group tuition is nearly as effective, providing up to 4 months' worth of additional learning for significantly lower costs. 4 months' progress could transform outcomes for your lowest attaining pupils and could enable your highest attainers to fly. 4 months progress could go in some small way towards leveling the playing field for your pupil premium children. It could allow you to find out what the silent middle is really capable of. It could rehabilitate the disengaged and improve attendance with your hardest to reach pupils. In order to implement tutoring in primary schools and maximize its benefits, I propose a collaborative approach based on successful partnerships between teachers and tutors. This partnership should rely on mutual professional regard, relational trust, and a pupil-centered approach. Done well, it would allow teachers, with the help of their tutor partner, to provide that ideal of one-to-one input for every pupil. I call this model teacher-tutor partnerships, and it is really very simple. Introducing teacher-tutor partnerships. Through teacher-tutor partnerships, teachers and tutors collaborate closely to design, deliver, and evaluate the intervention. Together, they choose the pupils, deliver and interpret assessments, and plan and adapt instructional approaches. By communicating regularly and picking up where the other leaves off, the teacher and tutor can jointly deliver an optimal learning experience. There's much research informing this approach. According to the study cited above, tutoring works best when it targets the pupils who will benefit the most. It is accessible to pupils anywhere. There's a commitment to ensuring that provision is consistently high quality. The model is flexible to meet the need of the school and the pupil. It's interesting that they left tutor out there. Communication between school and pupil and tutors is effective. The burden on schools is reduced wherever possible. It is committed to measuring impact, evaluating implementation, and consistently improving based on this evidence. It is able to continue to scale in order to support schools and pupils who would benefit. The teacher-tutor partnerships model enables a strategic selection of targeting of pupils based on both what the teacher knows and how the tutor feels they can help. It allows for the delivery of tutoring to be based around pupil need. It can accommodate any age, subject, or special need, providing you seek out tutors with the correct expertise. It creates a shared responsibility for high-quality provision, and it's built flexibly around the needs of all stakeholders. The model should localize the administration to the instructional level. It's funny that I know such long words. Rather than reducing admin, we are imbuing it with greater purpose and pedagogical gains. The partnership should take an assessment-first approach to planning, with a built-in feedback loop that measures impact to inform implementation. These assessments can take place in the classroom or in the tutoring session. Either way, the partnership should interpret the results together. Ultimately, the scalability of this decentralized approach is based on finding and keeping the right tutors by really getting to know them and integrating them as a valued part of the teaching team. Implementing tutor-teacher partnerships. Look, for a primary school leader looking to implement this kind of approach, the first step is to gather a collection of trustworthy tutors for each key stage or subject. Look for tutors who can complement and supplement your existing approach. If you're a maths mastery school, your tutors should use the maths mastery approach also. Or you might select tutors who take an alternative approach, for example, giving more time to EYFS style play-based learning. This could be a great resource for those pupils who need something different. Place particular focus on putting the right team of alternative provision tutors in touch with your SEND, attendance, safeguarding, and pastoral care staff. Brief the teachers on which tutors you've selected and why, or if they have capacity, invite them to participate in the selection process. Pair up the tutors with a partner on the teaching staff. You may choose to focus the tutoring intervention on particular classes or subjects. Pay attention also to which tutors are available and which teachers are most amenable to the project. These two factors will be make or break. Each teacher-tutor partnership will propose which pupils they would like to put forward for tutoring and what format the intervention should take. The recommendations of which pupils would receive tutoring each term, which learning objectives would be covered, and how impact would be measured will be put forward by the tutor-teacher team. Particular attention should be paid to the guidance around setting and streaming when it comes to selecting groups for tuition. The final decision will be taken by one specific member of the senior leadership team who will take responsibility for supervising not the tuition, but the tutor-teacher partnership. Evaluating teacher-tutor partnerships. Although the weight of the work sits between the tutor and the teacher, the senior leader responsible for the teacher-tutor partnerships would support and guide the partnership. Therefore, for partnerships to work well, training must be provided at every level on the delivery of effective, research-informed tutoring. Scaffolds should be developed that enable the teacher-tutor and senior leader to plan and evaluate the tutoring intervention on equal terms. There was a lot there for us to unpack, and much of it has been informed by the conversations that we've all had together. So I'd love to hear from you about, don't forget, this is in a head teachers magazine. So if there are head teachers that are genuinely reading and exploring the ideas of how to work best with tutors, what do you think they will come away with? What are your thoughts initially?
My first thought is, what response have you had from that article?
Yeah, well, it went out today.
Oh, it's today. Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I think very often, I didn't put a call to action in there, and I probably should have. So I don't know if I'll be able to measure the results, unless you can tell me what it meant for you.
I felt like validation.
Yeah.
I was cheering all the way through.
Oh, good.
If we could make something like that happen.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness me.
How far
And
are
then
we?
as it got towards the end, I was thinking of what Claire does.
Yeah. I was thinking about what Claire does when I was writing it. I was also thinking about what Jenna does. And I was thinking about, and Emma, and the frustrations that the rest of us feel when we, in the WhatsApp group, when somebody new wanders into the QT community and they ask a question about engaging with schools. And you can sort of hear the ripples of aggravation that go through the whole community, right? Jenna, tell us.
I think it was a really reassuring take. And I feel like it is probably a piece of writing that I'm going to keep favorited and send to people when they're asking me these questions. And
what kind of questions did they ask? And which people?
Tutors, schools, people who work within SEN. For example, I've been having I met the director of SEN services for one of the local councils just by chance recently on a dog walk.
You have to put yourself in the way of chance though, don't you? And you have to leverage it when it happens.
Yeah. And it kind of even just like a brief chat made me think that it felt like it had echoes of conversations I've had when I've gone for my DSL update training with the local council, when everyone there is primarily from schools, and it's the same questions, it's the same frustrations, and so often it's the same frustrations that we as tutors have, and the things that we're like, oh my god, just work with us, stop icing us out, kind of thing. And they're like, oh, but we can't have them in, we don't and I feel like you've just put a lot of that into really a well-worded kind of thing that says, no, just do the thing that you want to do, be the nurturing educator that you want to be that team that you want to be. Tutors are not a competition. We're here to support the young person in all of these different ways. Just to me, I work in very, very multidisciplinary teams, and it's what I curate is I work within a team where we've got therapists, we've got OTs, we've got for people who aren't aware, OTs are occupational therapists, SALT, speech and language therapists. We've even got EPs, educational psychologists on the team and stuff.
Yeah, now hold on a second. I just want to help Mohsin. Mohsin, I've given you the link to the article that we're discussing. It's free to sign up. So if you just want to catch up by reading that article, then we'll hear what your thoughts are when you're ready. Go ahead, Jenna, sorry.
And I feel like sometimes, and I mean this is changing more and more, and the more that I think I just start ranting at people and it's the same rants that they're having internally, but I'm not anywhere near as eloquent as you in saying it in the right way. And I know that sometimes, I mean, it's something that we've talked about before, right? I'm so passionate about it that I can get a little bit almost, it's not quite aggressive, but it's aggressive in my enthusiasm. And I feel like
it's that thing of blurting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. But that's a really important point, because in order for us to be able to get the message across to schools, It has to be spoken in a language that they can hear and delivered through a vehicle like a head teacher's magazine that they are willing to access. And that already is a massive sea change. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And it's like another piece. I really don't want to say piece of the puzzle, and that wasn't the direction I was going in, but like it's another, I can't remember what the first half of the metaphor or common saying is, but like it's another chink in the armor or like piece in the arsenal, whatever it is.
Need no. Someone else dive in.
I just say I thought it was really nice that message came from a head teacher who also knows the world of tutoring very well, because it's very difficult, I've found, to bring the two things together. You've already said pretty much what the problem is, that there's no way for a teacher to know whether or not a tutor is good from their position, and they don't really have the time to find out how. They need someone to tell them, this is a good tutor who's going to deliver what you need. Go work with them and they'll work out what you need. But they don't have time to do that, or to even know that that is possible. So that needs to be facilitated by somebody. And the only option that was ever made available for them was facilitated by the government. And I'm not going to say anything else about that.
Okay, but let's hold on to that for a second. So you're focusing on that senior leader who would be the liaison. And for me, what, and you know how these things sort of develop as you write them, and that's why it's better to write them than to blurt them, because I'm too passionate when I talk about it, and that's why this was helpful. But that idea that the senior leader isn't evaluating the tutoring, they're evaluating the partnership. I think that was quite powerful. Rosanna, what are your thoughts?
That stood out to me a lot as well, actually, because it's about that collaboration. I think that was a theme throughout the article, actually, this idea that there needs to be more collaboration between all the parties involved, actually, the tutors and the pupils and, the school staff and everything. And I like the idea that you've already, my impression of it is that you've already got to the point where the tutor's qualified enough to be doing that. So you don't need to constantly supervise what the tutor's doing. You have to kind of, at that point, trust that they know what they're doing and they are working in the best interests of the pupil and collaborating with the school. So that was kind of my impression. I don't know what your intention was behind writing it.
And I think that's a really, really powerful point, that there has to be some sort of baseline before these judgments and assumptions. And that's why I'm so passionate about the level 7 and even the level 3, that for somebody who doesn't have a teaching qualification, the level 3 is at least a foothold that helps you go further. But these are languages that school understands.
Exactly.
You need to give them shorthands, because we're all overwhelmed.
There's no, like, Dee was saying as well, and others in the group, like there's not enough time necessarily for teachers to be thinking about everything in such detail, because there already are so much pressures. And you could apply the same to a lot of tutors as well, who are trying to juggle lots of different clients and being self-employed a lot of the time as well, which has its own challenges. So I really like that side of it, because maybe this is more of a personal thing, but I can't stand being micromanaged. It really gives me the ick, for want of a better word. And I think if I was in a situation where I was being micromanaged, I think that would put me off having this kind of collaborative partnership. But the idea that the relationship is supervised, I think that works so much better for everybody involved, actually.
Yeah, it's so helpful, that point about micromanage. I think everyone in this room is here specifically because we hate being micromanaged, and that we know we can do so much more if we don't have somebody overseeing small details. But I also think that no, I've lost what I thought. Claire, what do you think?
I won't lie, I'm not firing on all cylinders this morning.
That's where we started, Claire. None of us are.
She's only here because apparently I bullied her into coming.
Thank you.
I've got the messages. I got the messages to prove it.
Thank you. I'm going to take a screenshot whilst everyone's here, because Dee's just reminded me how precious this is. Okay, done.
Yeah, I won't lie, I haven't read the article, and when you were reading it out then I wasn't taking any of it in, so I'm probably not the best person to answer any questions.
Okay. No, that's totally awesome. Do you know, I went to my writing class yesterday and I said, I'm unprepared, but I'm here.
Yeah. No, I went out to see The Lion King last night, and then the trains were up the spout and I didn't get home till gone 1 a.m.
Oh, wow.
And then I was up early, so I'm just kind of like, I'm here, but I'm not here.
Did you?
I'm enjoying all your lovely faces.
Good. Did you sit in the stalls?
Yes.
Did the puppets go past you?
Yeah, no, it's the third time I've seen
Best
it,
bit.
so it was
The
it was
best.
third.
I love the birds. Those are my
Yeah,
favorite
no, it's
on the
brilliant.
runs.
Can I
Anyway.
throw a question out there?
Was it about the Lion King or about tutoring?
I have two questions. Firstly, if I turn up to a tutoring session and say I'm not prepared, but I'm here, would that be okay to say? I'm
Oh,
kidding.
so no. Yes, and I was the learner in that context, and I was just being honest about what I could manage that day, and maybe
I do it
sometimes if you deliver.
because
Depends on the
particularly if
student.
I want
Modelling.
my older students, my year 11s, I have my books there and I'm like, right, what are we doing today? So it's not
I did have to Google something yesterday.
I think what Jenna's just given us a really helpful catch-all. She'd call it modeling, which means if we're gentle with ourselves, we're helping our students to be gentle too.
But I did have a genuine question about kind of something that occurred to me, because I don't have any contact directly with school. So for those in the call that do, how has the mindset of teachers towards tutors changed since COVID and NTP? And some things that have cropped up that I've seen online and also sometimes in the QT groups is that if kids are having to go to a private tutor, then has the teacher failed in some way?
Well, you know what I think about that, don't you? That is a myth.
Well, I know it is. I know it is,
Pernicious.
but I
Helen,
know
you've
that
got some
there are
opinions about
teachers
this
who think
question.
that. So
Helen's got some answers for you. Go on.
I don't know if I've got answers.
Thoughts.
My experience is that teachers can be tentative, they can be nervous to start with, but once you've got the relationship going,
Nice.
then that develops. So I've been in a school for a year and a half now, and my lesson reports go to the teacher and to the Senko because it's an alternative provision situation. So they're bringing me in to support a student that's got the additional needs. But they are also still in the mainstream classroom. So the teacher gets the report of what we've covered. And at this point, he's now happy to email me and go, we did this test. She needs to have a look at these 4 topics. And I'll go, sure, that's what we're going to do next.
That is stunning.
So we've got to that. And the Senkos and things all know that they can say, Helen, we can't do this week, or can you do something different? And generally, I'll be able to accommodate it. So there's a flexibility. You might have to be slightly more flexible with the school, but it's worth it to develop that relationship.
How lovely that you started by pointing out that you need to be patient, right? That it doesn't come quickly, but that it can happen. Helen's full of cold. Okay, I'm going to give you a moment. Rosanna, what were your thoughts about Dee's question?
Yeah, I totally hear what people are saying about how sometimes teachers can be a bit reticent to get tutors involved and they can feel like it's a bit of a threat. In my experience, having spoken to family members and friends who are working in secondary schools as teachers, I've actually found they're way more open to it now. I don't know if it's because of the NTP, because I had quite a different experience with that, which is something for another day. But with the COVID stuff,
not sure I dare to do that one.
yeah, it was a mixed bag, let's say. But anyway, so going back to the COVID, I don't know if it's necessarily since COVID, but I've just found that, like I say, my friends, my family members that are teachers, they're way more willing to talk with tutors. And I think a lot of that is because a lot of teachers have wanted to transition to being tutors, or at least thought about it.
You know that 25% of secondary school teachers tutor on the side?
No, I didn't know that, but it doesn't surprise me. If anything, 25%. I think it's... Yeah, if anything, I think it's probably going to increase because, like I say, my friends and my family members that I know that work in secondary schools are either thinking about doing it in addition to their teaching or maybe moving entirely over to tuition.
So the irony of being in that position and still not engaging with the tutors who are doing it is a very strange thing.
Yeah, but I found that my friends and my family members do want to engage more with tutors, actually. So I think it's changing, at least in my experience. I think
I'm struggling to hear you. I'm going to try to really just take a moment with that, because my feeling is that we're still not where we should be. But you're saying that you feel like we're going in the right direction, and that's really, really cool.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I thought you meant struggling to hear as in the microphone wasn't working.
No, I'm struggling to really accept what you're saying. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think it's really important. Emma, what are your thoughts?
I think it is changing, and I think that the reluctance isn't necessarily with the class teacher.
Okay, go on.
I think the reluctance is to do with perceptions and the view of a school rather than the view of the class teacher. Like every school I've worked in, every maths department has held a list of tutors that we would recommend.
Whoa. Is that something that sorry, hold on. Anyone else seen that?
I've worked in 3 schools over 13 years. And even the first one, 13 years ago,
never heard of that before.
List of tutors. And the amount of inquiries that I now get, and I always start the discovery call with, tell me where you're at, tell me about your child, tell me why you've come to us, like, where's it come from? I would say 80%, they're like, well, I've had a conversation with the teacher and they've recommended that I find a tutor.
Yeah.
And that's been for the last 4 years. I don't think it's necessarily a change. I think it depends on the school. I think it depends on the area. It depends on management in the school. Like, I think those conversations and those positive relationships have always happened, but not enough.
Not enough. And there's something about change management there, isn't there? There's something about mindset and getting it to ripple through from those really good spots to actually creating a new normal. That's what we want to do, isn't it? Who's got some thoughts to Mohsin? We haven't heard from you yet. Have you caught up? Mohsin, are you with us?
Yeah, I can hear. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. So what does it look like over where you are? The relationship between teachers and tutors?
Well, I think 2 things. First thing, I think that there's been reluctance over the past few years, I'd say rather. And I think that kind of comes from that very inherent human nature of not being very open to change sometimes. So that's one. But I think it's improving and it's actually moving in the right directions. And I think eventually it's always like the results speak for themselves. So, people, when they actually come and see that the students who, let's say, got to support, they improved, whatever the reasons were, everybody just starts thinking, okay, man, this is a good place to go to, and this is actually a good direction to be going in. So eventually it's like Rosanna mentioned, I feel like it's actually getting there. Maybe not exactly where it should be, but I feel like it is gonna eventually get there, hopefully.
Okay, so that's promising. Georgina's made an interesting point in the chat about what might be putting them off.
I spoke to a parent about that this week because as soon as she said, I'm going to contact the school teacher and ask them to tell me what we should cover, and immediately I went, ugh. And I was like, oh, she heard me do that, so I have to explain why I did that now. I was like, you absolutely have a conversation with your teacher, but 1, it isn't actually their responsibility because that's what we'll do with you first. And 2, if they're negative, please don't take anything from that. Sometimes teachers have a negative experience with tutors who just download the mock paper and tell their students the answers and completely make the mocks pointless or do
Does that still happen?
Oh, definitely. I've seen it. The students just go into the mock with their
spoiled. I only talk to you guys.
That is a complete waste of time because when they do their final exam, they're completely unprepared. But by then, the tutors finish working with them, so not their problem. So yeah, I just if we have conversations with teachers and they're very negative, it's fine. We don't always need their input, but anything they're prepared to share is helpful. Thanks.
Okay, so let's do this for a second. It's 11:35. I'm going to give us 10 minutes to explore the bad practice that might be putting schools off? Emma, I can see that you're unmuted, but now I've asked a different question. Go on.
I was just going to say, one of the things that I think it's not necessarily reluctant, but it is you're adding to their workload. And yes, I know that the long term is it's helping them. As a class teacher, it was another thing on the list. It was another thing to try and do, another person to communicate with. And there is an element of they've got a lot to do anyway.
Absolutely.
And I don't think it's necessarily reluctance, it's just capacity, brain capacity.
Absolutely.
They don't have
Absolutely.
capacity.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And really, that's the biggest thing. I'd say capacity is first and quality is second. So Emma and Georgina are both really bringing out important points here that hopefully, in the article, I hope I've spoken to some of those things, because Emma, and actually I think Crown has asked me to speak about this directly about the additional workload. I think when you articulate the value, research says 4 months, 5 months of progress. What could that look like? Tapping into what you're actually trying to do as an educator, right? That should make these things feel more important and more urgent, because otherwise they absolutely are the first things that drop off the plate.
And as a practitioner, you know that, but you're also being breathed down your neck saying you need to fill in this piece of paper that has the same piece of data on it. There's this piece of data and this piece of data in this system. And the pressure that's coming on the teachers, you end up doing tasks that you know aren't adding value, and you'd rather be talking to the tutor because you know it's valuable, but that's not your choice.
Absolutely right. And that's where the leadership comes in, because the leadership has to buy in. Yeah, they don't have to do the thing. We don't want them to manage and micromanage the thing. We just want them to care enough to make sure that this stays important as a priority. Jenna, I feel like you've got some thoughts here to share with us.
I was just typing them.
I can actually feel there's like a moment when your brain is like gonna pop if I don't call on you again.
I do think it kind of links into so many other issues and so many other qualms I have with the education system as a general thing, in that these things have to come from the top down. It has to be from way beyond senior management, right? It has to come from, like, especially when we're thinking about state schools, to come from like that central government kind of, let's make this a whole culture of collaborative teaching and really supportive education. And for that to trickle down, it should never be all on individual teachers. Just like climate change, a household switching over to paper straws isn't going to save the world when 90% of discarded waste into the ocean is not plastic straws and that sort of thing. It can't be this guilt tripping on an individual when each teacher is already dealing with tons and tons of accelerated curricula with no support in other areas. And like some schools, like the ones I think Emma may have more experience with, have some more of that, because in my experience, the schools that have those lists of local tutors, that have like that sort of, hey, here's some information about local supplementary services, or here are tutors we've worked with before, and have that level of openness, even if it's just accessing a list, are the same schools that from the top down have more of that kind of support of genuine professional development for teachers, genuine partnership working. Those are the schools that work with the AP. Like as someone who runs an alternative provision, who works with alternative provisions in the private sector and in the state sector, I find it fascinating and very, very telling. The schools who, even when they're legally required to work with me, don't. And the schools that, they work with me in a way that is way beyond their like legal requirements, and you can see that. Like, I've got one school where the head teacher of this massive secondary school is the person who is directly working with us as part of this team, as well as his Senko and all of
Isn't
that.
amazing?
And you can see it in the change that he's had in this school that he's taken over.
That's
and
beautiful.
I started working with the school before he came on board.
Jenna,
and it's amazing. Yeah,
I would
sorry.
be so grateful if you would introduce me to him.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
He's amazing.
Listen, for me, I had goosebumps when, Jenna, you used the phrase guilt trip. I think guilt is interesting here.
On all sides.
But the teacher's feeling guilty about not having nailed it, and feeling, because the message always is, it's always down to the teacher. It's too much. It's too much. And behind guilt sits shame. And the go-to response of shame is shutting down, which kills a partnership, which kills the opportunity to bring good people in. Cans of worms. Okay, we've got 4 minutes left of the negative stuff. Claire's just mentioned in the chat, Rosanna, I'm coming to you. Claire's just mentioned in the chat.
I didn't mean to unmute, but you can if you want.
Okay, love, thanks. Claire, you said about just getting eyes on a mock paper would be helpful. Do you mean once the student has completed the mock paper, you want to see what they've done? Helen, look, hold on to your head.
Yeah, so like, because my year sixes, for example, obviously doing death by SATs paper at the moment.
Yeah, that's status. Yeah, it's actually a medical term.
Yeah, and one of my students got 4 on a reasoning paper. She's really struggling, and I thought, well, that's really bad even for her. But I can't see the paper. Well, I probably could actually, but it's not that easy. They didn't give the papers to the kids to take home, which from a parent side of thing as well, I had that with my boys when they were younger. They would bring the paper home, and now my youngest child even now says, "Can I have my paper? Because my mum will want to see it."
Are you that, mum? Are you?
Yeah, but he does normally say she's a maths tutor, and then the maths teacher goes, "Oh,"
or she goes, "Oh,
yeah." But also, I mean, someone put about photographs. You know, they're not allowed their phones in school. So one of my year 11s, love her, she wasn't allowed to bring her mock test paper home, and I just managed to get, I don't know how, under the desk or whatever, this string of blurry photographs where I had to squint at the questions. And she, of all the ones that, like someone said in the chat,
what a wonderful reason for breaking the rule. I love
the ones that she wanted to talk about. And she's really not a rule breaker, but those photos were coming to me because she wanted to share. But it's hard, but to see a paper and to see what comes back.
It's not that we're asking to see something that isn't available, and we're not asking to see it ahead of time. Though I guess if they use the same paper for repetitive years, then
you know what it really is.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Their desks are a mess.
Well, that too.
That's all. Can I have a copy of the paper? Blimey, that's going to take me 20 minutes to find. That's all.
So there's the one that I sometimes
coming to you.
Get to see. They do a DIRT form. I can't remember what DIRT stands for. I'm sure somebody could tell me.
Dedicated. Read. No, it's a feedback moment.
It's a feedback moment.
It's making use of feedback.
So basically it's a page, and it tells me that question 1 was the topic on this. Yes. Question 2 was this, 3 was this, 4 was that, and so forth, for however many questions there were on that paper, that test, whatever it is. And I get the grade, so they send that over to me and they give it to the student. So these are the topics, this is how many marks you got on that particular question. So at least they can see, okay, I got no marks on the probability question. Okay, that means Helen's going to go do probability with me. So even that little piece of information, I don't necessarily, the benefits of seeing the whole paper are going, well, you've just added instead of subtracted there. Because that's an annoying mistake that regularly gets made.
I just asked a question, sorry. Now that I'm seeing directed improvement and reflection time.
Thank you.
Which part of school isn't that?
Behavior management.
Oh my goodness, Emma.
There was a thing at one point where we had to keep the papers because there is there's an ongoing thing where we have to keep the original papers in case they don't make it to the exam.
As a teacher grade, teacher something.
Yes. So basically, if there's something goes horrifically wrong, they can't sit their exams, you've got their mock papers. But, and this is where it comes back to the time thing, photocopy the papers. Let the kids take photos of the papers. Technology could help at this point. Like, they're asking kids to improve on their grade. Oh, but you're not allowed to see what you did the first time. So you're not allowed to see where you went wrong or how to improve it. And if it's been marked properly, all the feedback's on the paper.
You can see exactly where those marks have been dropped.
Yes.
You dropped the mark here. The step that you didn't do was to round it to how many decimal places.
Or you write on it the next step and then get them to finish it or whatever. When I was a class teacher, after every mock, I would mark it. I'd write SM for those questions where they'd got silly mistakes, and you know this topic. So when you get your rag sheet, which is what we used to call those forms Helen was talking about,
amber, green,
a rag sheet. So wherever I've written SM and you've got a red category, change it, because it's not red. It might be amber, but it's not red. You've just made a silly mistake. Or I'd get the kids, by the time they've done their
silly mistake.
Silly mistake.
Very nice.
So by the time they got to their third mark, I didn't write SM anymore. They wrote it. And you're training them to look at their own work, evaluate it, move on. But if they can't have the paper, they can't do that. Sorry.
That, my darling, is powerful feedback. And blimey, look at the good practice and the passion in this room. And if nothing else, if a teacher or a head teacher is listening to this conversation and listening to how much good practice and thinking is sitting behind it, that is an absolute credit to the profession. Georgina?
I mean, maybe this is my 50% robot brain, but it does seem a little bit stupid that it's 2024 and students can't get information about their grades because teachers don't have time to go through all of this paper and put that information on the computer to send it to the people that are interested, when at the end of the year, the entire country can get their grades sent to them. Obviously, we need digital exams, really, because then they could have that feedback as soon as they'd finished the exam and the teacher wouldn't have to do any additional work.
But then when would we get to practice our handwriting? And what would happen to all the people who sell pens?
Well, sucks for them. Same as the people who used to sell horses.
Yes, very good. So paperless exams could increase access and reduce. Oh, Mohsin, this is your department. Go on.
I agree with that. I think as much as I am a very paper-friendly person, if I could literally show you the number of papers I have on my table, you'd probably be surprised. But yeah, I agree with that. I think if I would touch on the basic idea of having teachers to your private tutor and your teacher partnership, I think if you can at least make sure that you're documenting everything, maybe digitally somehow, one way or the other, from day one onwards. Even if a new tutor, whenever he or she comes in, they can just probably observe and see, okay, this kid is good at this, bad as this, so on and so forth. Gives you a good idea, actually take it from there onwards. And on the note of course, not getting exam papers back, that is something I've struggled a lot with as well with my students. I'm like, they're like, okay, we got a higher 5. The teacher said you did this. And I'm like, okay, can we get to see that? I mean, let's improve, that's what you got to do. So they're like, we're just allowed to see it once, but are not allowed to take pictures. Doesn't make sense to me. I have no clue what that happens, to be honest. Because even in my time, I actually kind of used to fight. I want to get my exam paper back. And they used to be like, okay, we're not going to give it to you because then you're going to say, why did I lose a mark here and there? So, they're like, no. So I had that a thing with me, to be honest. So doesn't make sense to me, I think.
Oh, yours is not to question. That's another thing, right?
I've got a student, she's year 10, and the kids, if the kids query the marking on the paper,
yes,
and if the teacher and the kids end up getting punished, they actually get marks taken off. additional marks taken up, that they are, and the teacher's attitude is so negative that the kids will not query the way that their papers are being marked. They are so terrified of what the teacher might do.
Right. So there's two things there. Of course, that's really arcane. It's, that's Victorian, right? But at the same time, sitting behind that is safe, skilled, and supported. Because really, the teacher doesn't want to be challenged because they feel threatened. And that is all of those things. The teacher doesn't feel safe. The teacher doesn't trust their own skill level. The teacher doesn't dare look it up on Google in the middle of a session, right? And the teacher doesn't have support around them to say it's okay, you can be a human being. Jenna, your emphatic note in the chat makes me need to call on you next, because when you're saying louder for those at the back, I feel like you want to sum up. Hit it.
You can't teach a student in isolation. You cannot support someone in isolation, in an isolated setting, in an isolated environment, in isolation by yourself, by themselves, in repetition. It doesn't work, and it's not what people are. We need to be able to, it's one of the reasons why I tutor the way that I do, that I work really, really hard to integrate what I do into the rest of a young person's life. And a huge part of that is for young people who are at school, who are accessing other tutors, who are accessing other types of education, especially where there is direct overlap in any way with what we're doing, with what we're teaching, whether it's skills stuff or content. If we don't have a picture of what they're doing, of how we're fitting into the picture, we can't make that a really, really successful fit. We can't reinforce that, yes, that teacher is right, and what you're doing at school, this is actually what you're feeling is right, or this is how we can support that, and this is how what we're doing fits into that. We can't, tutoring isn't an isolated thing that just happens in someone's living room or dining room 1 hour a week. It has to be part of their whole educational journey. And that's why this is such an important conversation. And I do feel that it has changed post-COVID significantly, but anywhere near enough. It's like the tiniest drop in a massive ocean, and it isn't consistent. And there is still a lot of reluctance, a lot of threat. And I think that comes again from that top down, that it's coming from the top that are saying, if you were a good enough teacher, your students wouldn't need a tutor. That isn't true, because that can never be true. It doesn't matter how good of a classroom teacher you are. It doesn't matter whether you got 3 students or 30. That student needs variety. You need different input. You need a team. And for a team to work together, it's like going to the GP versus a specialist in a different trust who has none of your notes, has no access to anything but this tiny snippet that your GP has given them for your specialist referral, and they have no idea. They cannot treat you with so little information. Yes, they can throw everything at you, but you need that whole person. There's a rugby school's tagline is whole person, whole point. And I hate that that's their tagline, because that should be the tagline for the entire education system.
There you go, like dirt. So hold on a second. I'm going to come to Rosanna and Mohsin before I wrap up. Jenna, thank you. That was stunning. And for me, that point about a variety was immense, because that's such a neutral phrase. It's not some people need something different. It's everyone needs variety. Go on, Rosanna. Although I just want to pasta and cheese every night.
That's fine. I just want to echo what Jenna said with a personal experience, because I've had a lot of students show up very differently to me than they would in a school. I've had students who, for whatever reason, have quite a lot of behavioural issues, and they don't get on with the teachers at school for, whatever reason, but they've been better one-on-one. And, it's about tailoring that, but it's about knowing what's going on. And it's really hard to have that. I think it's about transparency for everybody involved. And what I found as well, because I'm on a lot of Facebook groups with teachers, I find they're very willing to talk to each other about, I need a bit of help marking this. Don't know if there's as much of that with talking to tutors about that. I mean, I could be wrong, But yeah, they do seem to sort of be quite happy to be, I think, like vulnerable, to use that word, and say, actually, I need a second opinion on this, especially for the subjects that I tutor, like English, history, philosophy. It's all essay based, and a lot of it can be quite subjective. And they'll say, I really don't know if I'm marking this correctly. So it's quite nice to see that, because it takes away that pressure that they might have to, you know, be perfect for everyone. And again, to echo what Jenna said, you could be the best teacher in the world, but you're not going to be able to get every single student the top grades or get them exactly where they need to go. And knowing that you need a bit of help, I actually think makes you a better teacher, to acknowledge that, rather than put pressure on yourself to. And it's not just pressure on yourself, like there are external things that put pressure on you as well, of course, as a teacher, but actually acknowledging that sometimes it is important to get help. I think, I think that's a real strength.
Oh, so beautiful. And really, you've set my mind in so many different directions. But I just want to hold on to that idea of not needing to be perfect, and feeling like it's okay to say, I need help with this, and that's immense. And the high stakes context, we're watching, well, we've just finished watching Bake Off. Bake Off! Don't tell them, no spoilers, no spoilers. But my kids watch Bake Off, and they love it because they say it's high stakes, low stakes. Like, on the one hand, it makes everything feel very exciting, but really it's just a cake, you know. And this is high stakes. It's high stakes for the teacher, all that pressure and the importance of education sitting behind it. And for the tutor, you've got that additional point of, I'm paid based on how seriously you take me. Right? So that just ramps it all up. But yeah, Bake Off. Mohsin, go for it.
Well, I think the first point I really wanted to mention, Rosanna just did that. I think if you kind of kill the whole purpose of education or being an educator, or being a learner or making someone learn, if you stop accepting the fact that you obviously are not everywhere all the time. I mean, you have some flaws and you got to improve. And I think what actually happens worse, which has actually happened to us as a society, is that when you actually start curbing on these things, you actually are trying to make a generation which doesn't know how to deal with dissent, doesn't know how to talk about the negatives, doesn't know how to, even within the community, doesn't know how to unite together and talk about the right thing. Everybody just wants to picture themselves as, those perfect guys or girls or whatever. And so it just kind of takes away the whole purpose of being an educator. Because at least from what I can recall, I could be wrong, but I think one of the biggest reasons I understood that I got to learn something was because I don't know that. So if I can at least firstly understand, accept that I don't know it, I'll probably be in a better place to start learning that. And number two, if I can actually, like, a bunch of people maybe right now, I should be able to hear them out, tell me the flaws that are there in me, and I should be accepting towards that. So I think that is, I mean, just a small example of not allowing the students to debate on the question paper is where
It's
big part of our
beautiful.
problem is.
It's beautiful. So, okay, let's see if we can pull this together now. We've spoken about Jenny, you just used the phrase in the chat of ecosystem, a learning ecosystem. Yeah, that's a paradigm shift, because we think that all learning happens inside school. Yeah, so then we talk about lifelong learning, which means it doesn't end at school. But what we're talking about here is spilling beyond the school walls, right? We're talking about the learning that happens in a tutoring session. And I can tell you for sure that Georgina's students are affected way beyond the hour of her session. Yeah, they're affected in their science context, they're affected in their sense of self, and they're affected in their relationship with teaching and learning. There's a ripple effect that we know happens here. And if we're talking about an ecosystem and claiming our place in this learning ecosystem and helping schools to make space for us in there, there's something really powerful about the idea of safe, skilled, and supported, where people feel able to open their minds to new ideas, have capacity to do that. And I'm really intrigued about Georgina and Mohsin's approach of what can we take off the burden of teachers. Emma was talking about that, the overwhelm, and those stupid triplicate data points that don't add any more information, and they're simply because the left hand doesn't talk to the right hand. So where can we streamline so that we can put our attention back on the humans in the room, the children, the adults, and all of those things? And I think that phrase guilt trip was really important. And I also am thinking about, and I think it was something that Dee said that made me think about power struggles, that there seems to be a real sense of, don't challenge me because my power is based on my authority. Whereas we in this room, who see ourselves as facilitators and coaches, as well as educators, we know that our authority and our power actually comes from our ability to ask questions, to be curious, to be generous, to be reflective. And that role is, I would actually say, low stakes, high stakes, because that puts us in the position to be able to ask a question, to be wrong, to be vulnerable, to have a crap November, but also to make immense change in this world. Puts us in a really, really strong position. You guys have been awesome today. And I've enjoyed it so much. Thank you so much, Dee. Thanks, Julia. Do you know what? I'm going to take that. I needed
Stick
it.
with that. Yeah.
Thanks, Georgina. Thanks, Emma. Thanks, Rosanna. Thanks, Jenna. Thanks, Mohsin. Thanks, Claire. You guys are amazing. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.